Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive into the world of habits.
Habits?
Yeah, you know those small everyday things we do that secretly shape our lives.
They really do.
We're diving deep into Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh, I love that book.
Right, it's become a bit of a phenomenon.
Definitely a classic in the personal growth world.
What I love about Clear's approach is that it's not about some massive overnight transformation.
Right, it's about consistency.
Exactly. It's about understanding the power of small changes applied consistently.
Like those tiny atomic particles.
Yes, exactly. And those tiny changes really can add up to huge results.
Absolutely.
It's like that story of the British cycling team.
Oh yeah, the one that went from zero to hero.
Yes, they went from being virtually unknown to dominating the Olympics.
And all by making tiny adjustments.
Exactly like finding the most aerodynamic gear.
Even the best massage gel.
Right. Who knew massage gel could make such a difference?
Well, every little bit counts, right?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of what Clear calls the aggregation of marginal gains.
It's so catchy.
It is, and it makes so much sense.
It really does.
It's not about making drastic changes.
It's about getting 1% better each day.
Consistently over time.
Exactly. And that compounding effect is huge.
It really is. Imagine improving by just 1% each day for a year.
You'd end up being 37 times better by the end of the year.
It's mind-blowing when you think about
It
it.
really puts things in perspective.
It does. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up consistently and making those small incremental improvements.
Couldn't agree more.
And that brings us to another key point. Clear makes it's not about willpower. It's about identity.
Oh, that's a good one.
So often we get caught up in trying to achieve a specific outcome.
Like losing weight.
Exactly, or quitting smoking or whatever it might be.
Right, we focus on the what instead of the who.
Yes, and we don't always address the underlying beliefs and self-image that might be holding us back.
It's like we're trying to force ourselves into a new way of being without actually changing our internal narrative.
Precisely, and that's where things get tricky.
Because our habits are often a reflection of our deeper beliefs about ourselves.
So instead of saying, I'm trying to quit smoking, which still keeps you in that smoker identity.
You shift your thinking to, I'm not a smoker.
Exactly. It's about embodying the identity of the person you want to become.
And when you see yourself as a non-smoker, your actions naturally start to align with that identity.
You're not relying on willpower alone. You're drawing on a deeper sense of self.
Such a powerful shift in mindset.
It really is. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of tiny gains and identity-based habits. But how do we actually put these ideas into practice?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. And this is where Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come in.
Oh, I love this framework.
Me too. It's incredibly practical.
It really is, and easy to remember.
The first law is to make it obvious.
Make it obvious.
We need those little cues to trigger our habit.
Like reminders.
Exactly. So if you want to read more, you might leave a book on your pillow.
You can't miss it then.
Right. Or if you're trying to drink more water, keep a full water bottle on your desk throughout the day.
Love those ideas.
Clear calls them implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions.
Getting really specific about when, where, and how you'll perform the habit.
Instead of just saying, I'll exercise this week.
You decide, I will work out for 30 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. in my living room.
No more guesswork.
You've removed the decision fatigue.
I like it.
Okay, the second law is make it attractive.
Make it attractive.
We're far more likely to stick with habits we genuinely enjoy, right?
Makes sense.
And one of the ways Clear suggests we do that is through temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. I love that term.
It's basically pairing something you need to do with something you want to do.
Like only letting yourself watch your favorite show while you're on the treadmill.
Yes, or only listening to your favorite podcast while you're cooking dinner.
You start to look forward to the task because it's associated with something enjoyable.
It's such a clever way to hack your brain.
It really is.
Now, the third law, make it easy, is where I think a lot of people get tripped up.
Make it easy. How so?
Well, we often try to do too much too soon.
We set unrealistic expectations.
Exactly. And then we get discouraged when we don't see results fast enough.
It's like that saying we overestimate what we can achieve in the short term.
And underestimate what we can accomplish in the long term.
Exactly. Clear emphasizes starting small, breaking down habits into their tiniest, most manageable steps.
And that's where his 2-minute rule comes in.
2-minute rule.
Instead of trying to meditate for 20 minutes, start with just 2.
Just 2 minutes.
Instead of writing a whole chapter, commit to writing just 1 paragraph.
I see. So it's about starting the habit so easy you can't say no.
Precisely. It's like that old saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Love that quote.
But sometimes even that first step can feel daunting.
So true.
Clear's 2-minute rule breaks it down into a manageable action.
It's about building that initial momentum.
I've found it incredibly helpful in my own life.
Me too. Once you've overcome the inertia of starting, it becomes much easier to keep going.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the fourth law. Make it satisfying.
Ah, yes. We're far more likely to repeat behaviors that feel rewarding, even in small ways.
This resonates with me so much.
Tell me about it.
I'm a sucker for checking things off a list.
Oh, me too. Those little bursts of dopamine.
Clear talks about the importance of tracking your habits.
He does, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
A simple notebook will do.
Exactly. It could be using a habit tracker app, marking an X on a calendar, or even just moving a marble from one jar to another.
I love that marble jar idea. So simple, but effective.
It's about creating a visual representation of your progress, no matter how small.
I love that visual reminder of progress. It's like giving yourself a little pat on the back each time you move that marble or mark off a day on the calendar.
I like to think of it as a way to celebrate those small wins.
And speaking of things that keep us motivated, Clear also dives into the power of environment and accountability, right?
Absolutely. We are incredibly influenced by our surroundings and the people around us.
It's true. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how your eating habits tend to change when you're on vacation?
Oh, totally. It's like all bets are off when I'm traveling.
Right. But it makes sense. Our environment plays a huge role in shaping our behavior.
It's like we're subconsciously adapting to our surroundings.
And Claire talks about how even having a close friend who's obese increases your chances of becoming obese.
It's a fascinating example of how our social circles influence our habits, often without us even realizing it.
We naturally adopt the behaviors and norms of those around us.
Which is why it's so important to be mindful of who we surround ourselves with.
Exactly. So if you want to build better habits, surround yourself with people who embody those habits.
People who inspire you to be your best self.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Such a powerful reminder.
And on that note, accountability partners can be incredibly helpful too.
Couldn't agree more.
Having someone to report to share your goals with, can provide that extra push we sometimes need.
Especially when motivation starts to waver.
Exactly. Knowing that someone else is aware of our goals and is rooting for us can make us less likely to hit the snooze button or skip that workout.
It's about leveraging social support in a positive way.
Now, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the idea of making bad habits unsatisfying.
Oh, yes. That's a good one.
This really resonated with me. It's not just about rewarding good behavior.
It's also about making those undesirable behaviors less appealing.
Exactly. Clear calls this increasing the friction.
Increasing the friction, I like that.
So for example, if you're trying to cut back on social media, delete the apps from your phone.
Make it harder to access.
Right. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, you have to actually think about it and go through a few extra steps.
And that can be enough to break the cycle.
Love that. Make it inconvenient, out of sight, out of mind.
And on the flip side, we can make good habits more appealing by decreasing the friction.
Yes. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Prep your healthy meals in advance.
Set yourself up for success.
Now, this next part really blew my mind.
Oh, tell me more.
Claire talks about how our brains actually change when we form habits.
Our brains change.
We're literally rewiring our neural pathways.
That's incredible. He gives that example of musicians having a larger cerebellum than non-musicians.
The cerebellum being the part of the brain responsible for motor control and coordination.
Right. So it's like our brains are adapting to the actions we repeat, becoming more efficient at those actions.
And it highlights this incredible power we have to shape our brains and ultimately our lives.
It's both empowering and a little bit daunting, don't you think?
Absolutely. It makes you realize that every action, every choice is shaping who we are becoming.
Which reminds me of another powerful strategy Clear talks about, habit stacking.
Oh yes, habit stacking is such a brilliant way to build new habits on top of existing ones.
Tell me more about it.
You take an established habit, something you already do consistently, and then you stack the new habit on top of it.
So it's like creating a chain reaction of positive behavior.
Exactly. So for example, after I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 2 minutes.
Or after I pour my morning coffee, I will write down 3 things I'm grateful for.
Exactly. You're using the cue of the existing habit to trigger the new behavior.
It's like creating a mental shortcut.
And it's a seamless way to integrate new habits into your routine.
Without having to overthink it.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Tiny gains, identity-based habits, the 4 laws of behavior change, environment, accountability, even the neuroscience behind habit formation.
It's a lot to digest.
It is. But the beauty of Clear's framework is that It's not about trying to do everything at once.
It's about taking it one step at a time.
It's about focusing on small, manageable changes and letting them compound over time.
And remember, it's not about being perfect.
It's about being consistent.
We all slip up. We all have setbacks.
The key is to not let those setbacks derail us completely.
Instead, we acknowledge them, learn from them, and get back on track.
It's about progress, not perfection.
And about being kind to ourselves throughout the process.
We're all works in progress, right?
Absolutely. Now, one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is maintaining motivation over the long haul.
Especially when that initial excitement wears off.
It's easy to fall back into old patterns. Have you experienced that?
100%. It's like you're gun-ho at the beginning.
All fired up.
Exactly. And then life happens.
And those old habits start creeping back in.
It's so frustrating.
It can be, but it's important to remember it's normal.
Really?
Absolutely, everyone experiences dips in motivation.
So it's not just me.
Not at all. It's part of the process.
I guess that makes me feel a little better.
It should, because it means you're not doing anything wrong.
It's easy to fall into that trap of thinking you're not cut out for it.
Right, like you're somehow failing if you're not perfectly consistent all the time.
Exactly. But the truth is, nobody's perfect.
Nobody. And in fact, those moments when we stumble, those are the moments that really test our commitment.
And our resilience.
Precisely. It's easy to stick with a habit when it's new and exciting.
But what about when the novelty wears off?
That's when the real work begins.
So how do we push through those times when we'd rather just give up?
Well, Clear talks about this idea of embracing boredom.
Embracing boredom.
Yes, because the truth is not every moment of habit building is going to be glamorous or exciting.
It's not always going to feel good.
Exactly, and that's okay.
It's about understanding that real change, lasting change, often happens in those seemingly mundane moments of simply showing up and doing the work, even when we don't feel like it.
It's about choosing long-term growth over short-term gratification.
And sometimes that means pushing through those moments of boredom or discomfort.
It's like putting on blinders and focusing on the finish line even when the race gets tough.
We might not always feel that initial excitement, but we keep going because we know it's moving us closer to where we want to be.
It's about playing the long game.
So how do we actually stay the course when that motivation dips, when we'd rather hit snooze or reach for that sugary snack instead of the healthy option?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, identity.
That internal compass.
Exactly. When those moments of doubt creep in, remind yourself of the person you're becoming, the values you're aligning yourself with.
Reconnect with your why.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent. We all slip up, we all have setbacks.
The key is to not let those setbacks derail us completely.
Acknowledge them, learn from them, and get back on track.
Progress, not perfection.
I love that. And you know what else I love?
What's that?
Self-compassion.
Being kind to ourselves.
Exactly. We're all human. We're all learning and growing.
We're all works in progress.
Beautifully said. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into atomic habits, is there one key takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with today?
I think for me, it's that reminder that small changes compounded over time can lead to remarkable results. Don't underestimate the power of those 1% improvements. What about you?
I'd have to say it's the importance of being kind to yourself throughout the process of habit change. It's not a race, it's a journey.
Beautifully said. And for our listeners, we have a final thought for you to ponder. If you could choose just one habit, one small change to focus on improving, what would it be?